Herbert William Mullin's classmates voted him most likely to succeed. By the time he was 25, he would take the lives of 13 men, women, and children. With a knife, he cut her open, pulled out all of her intestines, and laid them out. People ran for their lives as he fired a pistol, bat, and rifle. He claimed to be on an extraordinary mission to save lives through murder. He believed he was doing something heroic and significant. But was this heinous serial killer driven by nature or nurture? We asked the investigators who had to unravel the mystery. The purpose of my job with Herb Mullin was trying to figure out what made him tick, said one investigator. The murderer himself, Herbert William Mullin, was born to kill. I was a good Catholic. I said my prayers every day, went to church every Sunday, made sure I went to confession at least once a month, Mullin once said. Between October 13, 1972 and February 13, 1973, he committed his gruesome crimes. In January 1973, Sheriff's Detective Terry Medina encountered a crime scene he would never forget. When you work homicide as long as I did, there are things that get into your mind that you wish you could not have there anymore. This cabin was one of those scenes that haunts me a little bit, Medina recalled. The cabin was near an old tourist attraction in the Santa Cruz mountains known as the Mystery Spot, a place advertised as where the planet and gravity don't exist as it does in other places. The night the bodies were discovered, it was clear something unnatural had occurred. The cabin was home to 30-year-old Kathy Francis and her family. 3 bodies were found, Mrs. Francis and her 2 young sons. The first thing that hit me was the Christmas tree knocked down and decorations broken. It was supposed to be such a good time of year, and there was obviously a violent struggle in that cabin. She put up a big fight, Medina said. The boys had been playing Chinese checkers in their bunk before the killer shot them and stabbed them with a hunting knife. One of them had to be pulled by the foot to be stabbed. It seems so peaceful when you hear those birds. Who would have thought something this tragic would have happened in such a quiet, pretty place? Medina reflected. The unexplained murder at the Mystery Spot was just one of many that terrified the laid-back coastal community of Santa Cruz during 4 months of madness. This was a strange time, to say the least. The DA came out and called us the murder capital of the world, said one resident. A killer was striking indiscriminately, young women, children, the elderly, even a priest. People were frightened. They didn't have a clue who was involved, another recalled. No one was safe. The police were under immense pressure as bodies turned up with no clear connection. On February 13, 1973, a single rifle shot rang out on the Santa Cruz cliffs, and the mystery began to unravel. 73-year-old Fred Perez was gardening when a young man drove into the neighborhood, shot him, and drove off. A neighbor spotted the car, and police soon stopped it. The occupant was 25-year-old Herbert William Mullin, a seemingly mild-mannered young man. He was unassuming, quiet. If you looked at him and talked to him, you'd think he was a law-abiding citizen, said one investigator. But there was more to Mullin than met the eye. Mullin was charged with the fatal shootings of 6 persons in the past 3 weeks and suspected of as many as 13 murders. Despite being voted most likely to succeed in high school and holding a college scholarship, Mullin had reportedly been involved with the Santa Cruz drug culture. Investigators, including defense investigator Harold Cartwright, began searching for answers. The purpose of my job with Herb Mullin was trying to figure out what made him tick, Cartwright said. Cartwright's investigation led him to Mullin's hometown of Felton, nestled among the redwoods of the Santa Cruz Mountains. Mullin had graduated from San Lorenzo Valley High School in 1965 as an excellent student and good football player. Here's this wonderful young man, and a few years later, he's a mass murderer and serial killer. That's not something that happens to the average person. What happened? Cartwright wondered. No one could have known it, but the moment of Herbert Mullin's birth would later take on a terrible significance. Mullin himself described a moment of peace and curiosity as a child. I was looking into a puddle, saw myself and the red leaves reflected in the sunlight. I touched it and created a wave. I felt peaceful, calm, inquisitive, curious, content, graceful. So what had turned this optimistic infant into a killer? I remember the first time I ever got him to say anything in response to one of my questions, Cartwright recalled. He finally looked at me and said, "When God speaks to you, you listen." Investigators uncovered one of the most bizarre stories in criminal history. Mullin claimed he had to save the world after hearing voices telling him he was one of the chosen people. His premise was that he had to prevent cataclysmic earthquakes by killing people. The earthquake was going to take California into the sea and he had to perform ritual sacrifices to prevent it, Cartwright explained. Mullin believed willing victims would offer themselves to him telepathically. His first victim, in October 1972, was a local hobo named Lawrence White, known as Whitey. Mullin later claimed Whitey had signaled telepathically that he was ready to die. He parked his car, put the hood up, and when Whitey stopped to help, Mullin beat him to death with a baseball bat, Medina said. The investigation into White's death led nowhere, but Mullin's killing spree had only begun. On October 24, 1972, Mullin offered a ride to 24-year-old Cabrillo College student Mary Guilfoyle. He not only stabbed her but essentially cut her open, pulled out all her intestines, and laid them out, Cartwright said. There was no emotion when Mullin later described the killing. Next, on All Souls' Day in November 1972, Mullin entered a church and stabbed a beloved priest, Father Henri Tomei, in the heart during confession. Mullin claimed the priest had willingly offered himself as a sacrifice. The priest, even after being stabbed, said words to the effect that he forgave him, Cartwright recalled. Detectives delved into Mullin's childhood, interviewing his parents. His mother was a very nice, typical mom at the time. His father was a strict former Marine who worked for the post office, Medina said. Mullin had been a good student and athlete, but after high school, he began to change. His high school girlfriend described him as becoming stranger and more controlling, even slapping her legs when annoyed. Mullin's sister recalled the first time she became concerned about him. During a family dinner, he began mimicking her husband's every move, as if in a trance. This behavior, known as echopraxia, can be a symptom of schizophrenia. Mullin also alleged that a high school friend, Jim Johnera, introduced him to mind-altering drugs, leading him to drop Catholicism for Eastern religions and register as a conscientious objector. His family blamed drugs for his behavior, but investigators found no direct link. By January 1973, Mullin had killed a hobo, a college girl, and a priest. His next victim was personal, Jim Johnera, whom he blamed for introducing him to drugs. Mullin shot Johnera and stabbed his wife, then returned to the Francis house to kill Kathy Francis and her 2 sons for giving him Johnera's address. Mullin's murderous mission continued. Days after his arrest, detectives found 4 teenage campers murdered in a remote part of Henry Cowell State Park. Each had been shot in the head. The bullets matched Mullin's rifle. He claimed the teens had telepathically offered themselves as sacrifices. Mullin's trial shocked and repulsed the jury. His attorney argued insanity, but Mullin interrupted proceedings, incriminating himself by reacting to descriptions of the crimes. He testified, lecturing the court about his delusions, claiming his family and neighbors had conspired to drive him to murder. The jury found him sane at the time of the crimes, convicting him of 2 counts of first-degree murder and 8 counts of second-degree murder. Some dismissed Mullin as just another madman, but investigators questioned what made him different. There are a lot of paranoid schizophrenics who don't kill people. Why did this happen to him? Cartwright asked. Mullin himself continues to argue that his crimes were the result of nurture, not nature, seeking leniency or parole. But for the investigators and victims' families, the answer is clear. Think of all the lives he destroyed. He was crazy as hell. Heaven forbid he should ever be released from prison, Medina said.